Boys and girls, welcome back. Today's video is car engine cleaning. What I want to add is a few tips. So this is the simple process. Pre-inspection, remove any loose debris, pre-spot, apply your desired engine degreaser, agitate as needed with brushes, hose off, blow off, start the engine, go from there. That's the basic rudimentary directions. So let's get started. Here we have my 2018 BMW M4. It has approximately 13,000 miles on it. It's never been detailed as far as the engine goes. So pre-inspection, for example, if you are a professional detailer or a car owner in general, this matters not. What you want to do is you want to clean your engine when it's cool. Perhaps it can be a little warm, but ideally it needs to be cool for a couple reasons. One, if it's hot, guys go into freak out mode because they think when you introduce water it's going to crack certain metal parts. Whether that's true or not, there's a lot of moving parts as to whether that's a valid point or not. The greater point is that when you have a hot engine and you introduce liquids to it, those liquids are going to flash dry. Once they become dry, they basically become ineffective. So that's why one of the major reasons I work on a cool engine. Secondly, if you're a professional detailer, you want to make sure that the engine is operating as it should. So even though I want a cool engine, I want to start up that engine. So for example, let's say you roll up onto the car, your appointment, and it's sitting in the driveway positioned exactly how you're going to work on it. Well, I want to make sure I start up that car to make sure that it runs and idles normally before I introduce water or even touch this engine. Because let's say you didn't verify that at the beginning, and now you detail the engine and Johnny customer comes out and it's idling rough or it's not starting up properly, and now the blame's gonna fall upon you. So you need to verify that first. Past that, I wanna do a visual inspection. For example, up here, we have some old valet parking tickets that are still caught in the engine bay itself because it's never been detailed. We've got dry, loose debris as in the form of leaves here. We come over here and we've got like almost like a rat's nest of I don't know what you call this, tree dander. So what I want to do is assess down here, and a lot of guys forget to look and assess up here. Because this is a white car, dirt will show up more on white paint, obviously, because it makes for a sharp contrast as far as a canvas goes. So in this case, before I introduce any liquids to it, I want to pre-inspect it. So I know because there's some loose material, I'm going to take my leaf blower to it first and blow that out, because once I introduce liquids to the equation, it will have an unwanted effect on some of that loose material. Also, there's some areas here. I'll zoom in. This is heavy oil. This yellow goo is like industrial strength. It's like an adhesive slash sealant. They use this when they assemble the body parts at the factory. I don't like it. It's unwanted. Yes, I can eliminate it, but it's going to require special chemicals to do that. So this might be an area that I pre-treat. So I'm going to pre-blow to remove the loose, dry debris. Then I'm going to come in, I'm going to pre-treat these spots with a special chemical before I just use my general all-purpose cleaner or degreaser. As I attempt to blow with the leaf blower, I may need a brush in order to break loose some of the material. That's where you're going to have to decide your weapon of choice. This is one of the reasons that I prefer a leaf blower like this, because I can reach right over to these other corners without breaking my back with a smaller leaf blower or a dedicated detailing blower. These are my two brushes of choice. Once I have done that, that's where I'm going to come in with my citrus base rapid remover. I know that this, even though it's labeled as an adhesive remover, at a level, this is exactly what this yellow goo is a form of adhesive and sealant. What's cool about Rapid Remover, it is that it's water soluble. So I don't necessarily have to pre-treat this and rinse it first. I just want to make sure that I've broken down that really thick industrial strength adhesive. And I'm just going to pick and choose based on where I see it. It's over there, it's over here, it's also over here. Now the general rule is this: when it comes to chemicals, once you apply them, you don't want them to dry. So as I'm working in here, and this is one of my tricks, is I use a pressurized just insecticide, whatever type of sprayer. I pump it up and now I have instant pressure. So I can spray this and keep it wet, the areas that I've treated, just like this. It also allows me to inspect. So let's say I haven't fully achieved success as far as eliminating this heavy grease buildup. So that allows me to keep the liquid viscous, as in liquidy, which I know is not really a word. So there, I've pre-treated. At this point, it's not really overly dirty. There's not really any excessive amounts of dirt. I'm going to address the top of this hood separately because I don't need to introduce a lot of liquids and chemicals, water, whatever, in order to get it clean. So I'm mainly going to deal with this right now. What I'm using for today is the Crystal Simple Green. It's a concentrate, it's very economical, and look at all these things. Biodegradable, non-abrasive, concentrate, VOC compliant, non-caustic, non-flammable, rinses residue free. That is a seriously winning combination in my book. Because this is dirtier dirt, how's that for redundancy? I'm going to blend that at the same rate that I use it for my wheels, because this is the exact formulation I use for my wheels and cleaning my wheels. Is going to be 4-to-1, 5-to-1, somewhere in that winning balance. You don't have to overthink it, just apply it. I will be using a pressure washer, which will aid in the effectiveness of this, because you can go with the harsher chemical and lower pressure of water like your garden hose, but that's where the trade-offs come in. Is I can use a biodegradable, more friendly, but yet very effective chemical and introduce some pressure in the form of a pressure washer, and that winning combination is a winning combination. So let's say you don't have a pressure washer. You may need to use a garden hose. You attach a nozzle to it. You may have to use some more scrubbing, maybe a harsher chemical, but that's where you have to decide for you in your world. As a rule, I want to keep it off the paint right now. If you're worried about that, then you can pre-wet the sides of your car down. You can even wipe them down initially and put some wax on them, on the side panels of your car, and that will really allow for additional protection. So there it is. If I want to do some scrubbing, there's two types of brushes. One's just an extension. I pick a softer type of bristle, and I can go over the manifold. This is just a plastic shrouding. Really, this car engine is not that dirty. And by the way, there's this endless debate as to getting components of an engine wet, like the alternator specifically, which resides right down there. I've verified with 3 different mechanics. It's not a problem. There are some engines that are configured where the spark plugs are sitting upright, as in position down on top of the hood, or I'm sorry, the intake manifold, and they will collect water around them. But there's a simple cure for that, which is blowing the engine off with air after you've degreased it. Now I'm noticing that I still have a little bit of this unwanted adhesive schmang over here, so I'm going to address that very quickly. Make sure my engine is still wet. Okay, I've got my pressure washer over there. Got my engine now that's ready to be blown off. If it's your first rodeo with a pressure washer, you may in fact want to prime it first so you don't get a little air in the hose. Because I'm not choosing to wash my entire car at this moment, this is where I need to manage the water because part of my car is in the sun. So I'll just take some distilled water and I will mop it up so I don't have any water spotting, unwanted water spotting of my car. This is where maybe you might pick a moment where you're going to wash your car anyways and you don't mind getting it all wet. I would recommend working in complete shade if that's the case. Once again, it's all about managing your liquids, or that's a big part of the equation, is managing your liquids. Your cleaners, solvents, whatever word you want to use. And just as a note, my car was basically clean, so I'm not just aggressively wiping over dirt. At this point, you're going to do a pre-inspection before you blow it off with the blower. I've already done that as I was wiping down the car, and this is where you can have a couple of options based on my strategy, which is I'm not going to apply the basic methods of doing the top of the hood. I'm going to just spot treat these and clean these because the dirt is minimal there. So what I want to do is to avoid standing water. While I'm doing that is I'm going to blow this off first. Then as I'm starting up the engine, letting it run and come up to normal operating temperatures, I can be working on this hood, and that's kind of a way of me multitasking and being more efficient. When you're blowing it off, what you're really looking for is to remove as much water as possible, and in particular any standing water, like any pooled up standing water that might collect in areas like this or like this. Okay, I've scrutinized the area. I've touched up any spots that needed touching up. Now I've checked also for any standing water. It looks good to go. This is where I'm going to start it up. And then while it's running and coming up to normal operating temperatures for complete drying, I'm going to be working on the hood, but let's start it up. A cautionary thing is this. When you're blowing it, there's so many intricacies and nuances of an engine. So you think you have it dry, and then suddenly you point your blower down in a particular spot and a big burst of water will come out. So you really need to be thorough in blowing and getting that nozzle in all these tight little areas. I do pay special attention to any electrical connectors, even though they're sealed very tightly, generally with a rubber gasket, as well as often some goo that's meant to resist water. So as a rule, they're very tight, especially on modern day engines. So I'm not overly concerned, but I do pay attention to those areas when I'm blowing it off. Also, make sure you don't have some miscellaneous rag that you've forgotten about that will get sucked up in a belt or fan or something else. So you just need to scope your area out before you start that engine up. And we have success. So I'm going to let that run. Hopefully you guys are hearing me still. As it's rising in temperature, I'm just going to go across the hood. This is my simple green, and I'm going to spot treat and clean the hood. I'm going to finish this up, let it rise to temperature, and then I'm going to bring you guys back in. Okay guys, check out the top of the hood. I detailed that. I started the engine, you heard that. I allowed it to maintain or rise to operating temperatures. It is now warm. Okay, I can leave my hand on it. This is actually where the oil filter goes into. I think this is what's called the intercooler because I've got the intake manifolds here, the turbo exhaust, it's all connected. So my go-to spray for a engine dressing, if you like an engine dressing, which I do, is the Stoner. The reason I like the Stoner, and yes, it does say flammable on it because it's got a propellant that's flammable, which I'm not exposing it to open flame, I'm not exposing it to a smoking hot engine. Once it dries, it's a non-issue. I've never had a problem with it ever, as in ever in 30 years. Now, 30 years ago, I was not using this product because I didn't know about it. This is before the internet. Once I found out about it, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in love. And what I like about this particular product is that the mist is so fine, unlike some of the other versions like Back to Black or whatever, that this is just a finer spray, a finer mist. It's not the only thing you can use.